Nothing quite like a bluebird day in the forest. All right, well, you guys already know that I actually prefer cloudy days over sunny days. Clouds, they act like nature's softbox. They help to soften down that light. Sunny days aren't bad. They're in no way a big deterrent, but they are more difficult for me. I do like that soft light. But today, I actually have a different thought in mind. I feel like what I'm going to do is give myself a little bit of a challenge. So the challenge that I have set forward to myself, it has to do with this guy right here. This is my 50 millimeter 1.8. This the fantastic plastic or nifty 50. There's a bunch of different nicknames for this guy. It's an inexpensive, it's only about $100, 50 millimeter lens with a 1.8 aperture on it. So you can really play with softening that background. But I don't use this lens very often. This one usually just kind of sits in my backpack, and I don't really take it out all that often. So I thought today, with the sun and the high contrast, I would play with this. I would practice with this, I would work with this, and see what I can come up with. And there's a few reasons behind this, partially because of the day, and it's not quite what I thought it was going to be. I thought there was clouds, so the weather forecast was a little bit off. But it's really about trying to challenge myself and trying to push myself out of the comfort of the lenses that I'm very used to using. So let's give this a shot. So why am I doing this? I have been thinking a lot lately about choice and the kind of choices we have in our daily lives as humans. And most specifically, the thing I've been thinking about is this paralyzing phenomenon of indecision when we have too many choices. I can tell you personally, recently I was in the grocery store and I just wanted a bag of chips. I just wanted some tortilla chips to go with some salsa. And I stood in front of the chips and I stood there and I stood there and I stood there looking at all the choices in chips. And I kept going, all I want is some chips. It ties into another story, a very similar story with a friend of mine who was doing a long through hike of parts of the PCT. When she came off the trail, she'd been out there where most of her choices have been made for her previously to her being out there. She had already decided what clothes she was going to take with her, what her meals were, things like that. And so she came into the grocery store in a town where she stopped in, and she as well was standing in the grocery store aisle going, I don't understand, I can't get it. Because for so long, her choices had been made for her. So I started thinking about this happening in our daily lives and how often we have so many choices and we sit there and we waffle back and forth between two and we try to figure this out and we try to do that and we're researching new gear or something like that, and we're always like, well, if I do this and I have this, but if I have this I can do this, but if I wait for this thing, and eventually no choice is ever made. So what I'm doing today is not only giving myself a challenge of practicing with a lens that I don't use all that often, I am also limiting my choices. And what I mean by that is usually I have a zoom lens on here. My favorite go-to lens is a 24-105. It gives me all sorts of choices in my compositions. I can stand still and I can zoom in and out and I can frame things up and create a composition by giving myself all that range. This is taking that away. This is giving me one focal length. So now if I want to compose something, I have to move. I have to become more involved in my photography and I have to become more involved in my composition. So that is what I'm hoping happens today. So I'm gonna keep playing with this and let's see what happens. So here is my first real challenge. I really am enjoying how the sun is backlighting these leaves on this small tree here. And I want to make that the prominent part of my image. But to get a larger amount of this in, I have to physically back up, which then diminishes its presence. So I want to be close to it, and what I really want is my 24 millimeter wide angle lens, or wider angle lens. That way I can be here and shoot a wider and make this more prominent in the image. So I'm gonna take a few more shots here, see if I can find a good spot that really highlights the lines of the leaves. But this is I kind of thought this might happen, but this is an interesting challenge. I've come down to one of my favorite trees here in the forest. You can see right now it's just being completely blasted with light, but I still think that there might be a good composition here. Something maybe I can do, convert to a black and white or something. But this guy, I've just loved his character. I've loved how he sits in amongst all of these very straight trees. The way it kind of twists a little bit at the top and is a little bit unkempt. He's just a very cool character. Or she, I never really went and checked. But I'm going to see what I can do with this. I also really enjoy this lower part here, which is really hard for you to see on there because it's just so contrasty right now with the sun. But there is also a smaller tree that is moss covered that is actually arching over in front. So I'm going to see what I can do with this, see if I can find something and honor this tree a little bit more. But this might be, this might just become black and white. I don't know, but I'll see what I can get. So I've come down here a little bit, down and actually around to the side now, so I'm trying to get this side light coming through. It's a little bit mottled coming through the leaves of the other trees, but you can see just how contrasty it is here. I'm trying to keep myself in the camera in shade, but you can see how bright everything is around me. But I think if I can frame this up, those trees in the background are far darker, so I can get them to recede from the presence of this really cool arching smaller tree, just simply through the contrast. And then I'm going to take advantage of the little bit larger aperture that I can get out of this guy. So I'm going to see if I can make something of this angle here and see what we can come up with. So I'm sure at this point here you're beginning to wonder what came out of this. What's the outcome? What did I learn? So first off, photography in full sunshine, that's hard, but we knew that. We knew that it was hard to deal with the high contrast and the intensity of the sun on these cameras. Even trying to find compositions that would convert to black and white easily was difficult. But that's all information that we all knew. We all know that information. We've heard it 100 times from every other photographer that goes out into the forest. But when it comes to the limitations of using just this one lens, I did learn a couple of things. One, it's good to take out your least used lenses now and then and reacquaint yourself with it and kind of get a feeling of what its power is. Like in my other lens, that 24 to 105, it drops down to an f4. And normally when I'm doing this kind of photography, I'm living somewhere in that f9 to f11 range because I'm wanting that depth of field and things like that. But by pulling this guy out with that f1.8, I was really able to reacquaint myself with letting the background just go blurry, letting the foreground go blurry, and really trying to use that shallow depth of field to kind of isolate the subject. So that was a nice reminder for things. The thing that I didn't expect, ooh, that was a nasty bug. The thing I didn't expect was I ran into that one challenge earlier on. We're trying to get that one tree. I wanted to get a wider shot, but if I backed up, that whole thing. I knew I was going to have some challenges. I knew that was going to come along. But what I did not expect was kind of the freeing nature that I have. It was, I think I've actually shot more images today than I have in any outing recently. And I think a lot of that has to do with one of the decisions was made for me. There was no waffling about of trying to figure out what lens am I going to use? What am I going to do? How am I going to compose this? I had one. That's all I had today. And it was up to me to move around. I moved more. I interacted. I circled around these trees more and found new angles. So there was something that was unexpected of how active I became in my photography by reducing and eliminating a choice. So I'm really kind of curious. It'll be fun once I get back home and get these images into Lightroom and processed what came out of it and what images I have. And I'm excited for that. And I'm going to put them up here at the ends, the better ones, and let you guys see that. But as you can see on my face here, still a very, very high contrast day, really kind of difficult. I'm going to try and do some more shooting here, but yeah, I would really encourage you guys to try this, especially on a day where it's not the ideal conditions for you. Take a lens you don't normally use and just cut away all the other choices of which lens and what and this and that. Give it a shot and see what happens. So thanks for watching. Thanks for joining me. Have a good day.